But joining us, the very delightful Pistons beat writer for Woodward Sports, Brandon Dent. You were
I appreciate that, brother.
Have you slept?
Not really.
I don't.
This man
I'm so
sent
tired,
me,
man.
Sent me a selfie at like probably a little bit after midnight last night, saying,
Yeah,
tired,
we were at the
but I'm
Performance
still
Center,
here.
brother.
This man's been grinding.
And again, Matt, if you could pull his mic volume up a little bit, just people are saying they can't hear him. But Brandon, I want to start with the question because we just saw Troy Weaver's comments about Ausar and the impact that he expects him to have. And he had a lot of nuggets in his presser. And I think he kind of broke down a lot of the questions, at least for me as well. I know people are still skeptical because they're always going to be skeptical, but he did answer a lot of the questions that I had. Number one, it was the shooting part of it, and he kind of alluded to the athleticism, and he feels that if you have a guy that athletic with that many tools, especially when he's shown improvement with his shot, he can figure some of that out. But the biggest part, or the biggest thing I took away is the statement he made about helping Cade and Ivy guard the best player on the opposing team. And that's something I can even admit. Hendricks ain't doing that. Jarris ain't doing that. Like a guy who can guard point guards and two guards on a consistent basis. What does Ausar's fit look like in Detroit?
Listen, I want to talk about that athleticism on the offensive side of things and how excited some of us kind of got. You know, we were talking about what he can add. We were talking about on the show last night. Troy was ecstatic about what his athleticism is going to mean to the defensive side. And it wasn't even like helping Cade and Ivy defend the best player. It was taking the pressure off those guys. Like, hey, y'all go worry about what you're supposed to worry about. I'm defending the best player. This was one of the biggest, we called it the number one issue that the Pistons had to solve when Jeremy Grant was traded. We all like the haul for Jalen Duren. We like Bojan Bogdanovic and what he could be as a shooter. But they needed somebody on that wing who could go out there and absolutely shut down or at least make it tough on players like Giannis. This division is stocked full of those types of guys. And Troy believes, like 100%, that Ausar Thompson is that guy. He really does.
And also on top of that, the thing that I think is the most intriguing about Ausar is when Troy talked about the modern-day NBA, and he alluded to kind of the death lineup for the Golden State Warriors. And again, I'm not going to compare it. I don't want to compare it at all because you have two of the greatest shooters of all time. But I'm talking about the philosophy there and he brought up Iguodala. And I have to say this. Yesterday, Chris brought up Iguodala on heavyweights, and I just sat there and I'm like, I don't know if I love that. But people forget Iguodala early on in his career was an 20-point scorer.
That's the nuance there.
Yes. We think of Iggy in modern day times. Of course, Iggy especially with Philadelphia, he was a completely different player. So with that comparison, using Ausar the way they're going to use him, having multiple guys on the court at all times that can make plays, like kind of speak on that a little bit. Because Ausar compared to Taylor Hendricks, Jarris Walker, I think he has the best playmaking. He, as a perimeter defender, he's the best. He's the most athletic. So I think there's a lot of things that he checks off. But what about that comment he made about having multiple guys on the court at once that can make plays with the basketball? Key word, with the basketball.
Listen, he's been true to his word. We've been saying it all the time. Troy Weaver, he's telling the truth. He said this at his exit interviews. He would take 5 guys on the court who can create at all times, who have that basketball IQ. And Ausar Thompson, he fits that mold. What they're able to do offensively now, I feel like the Pistons are trying to redefine what stretching the floor means. You know, it's not just if you can hit the three or stand in the corner and hit the three. We've seen the Pistons kind of run through those types of prospects, and if they couldn't hit that three, we just kind of discarded them. But if this player can play make from their spot on the floor, when they catch it, when Cade opens up the space because of all the gravity he's going to collect, what is Ausar Thompson? Troy sees him as somebody who is never going to be in a pinch when I hear him talk. Andre Iguodala was somebody that we never saw in his Philly days get into a pinch. Even the way he dribbled, man, I used to think, oh, he's about to lose that or somebody's about to steal that, and he just never did. He was always solid. So from an offensive standpoint, he's a guy who's going to play make, he's going to distribute, but I think he's looking to score. Like, I know they say he has this playmaking knack, but I want him to actually go out there and look to get that 18 to 20 points per game, use that athleticism. And Troy said something real interesting about his athleticism. And it's something we said about Ivy too. NBA spacing gives guys like that, it's a trampoline in the middle of the floor. He said he not only has, athleticism in space, but all over the floor. When you're talking about half-court sets and what you're able to do, We kept talking about why aren't they doing any, dribble drives, dribble handoffs, backdoor cuts for Ivy, getting their athletic guys like Duran going. Well, you know what? They're talking about with Monty being able to do a little bit more of that. And Asar Thompson's a guy who you can throw the ball up to him. He'll catch it. He'll get it. He's dunking that. He's a guy you can, when Cade drives and kicks it out to the corner, he's one of those pump fake, one dribble, and I'm dunking on you guys. Like, that's who Asar Thompson is, or at least what Troy Weaver is telling us he can become.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with you. I think Asar Thompson is going to be better served off the ball, especially getting good looks from guys like Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other side of the ball, because I'm looking at Asar Thompson and a healthy Cade Cunningham, presumably, and even Marcus Sasser. How much could those three help them on the defensive side of the ball?
Man, hold on. Marcus Sasser, man, what a pick. We couldn't talk about him last night because they were still working through some things. Hopefully we get to talk about him today. But we kept talking about the fact that Stewart was kind of like the one player we could identify on the defensive side of things that had that dog in him, and they needed to start to add more people that have that trait. Detroit sports is not about us yapping about only having one guy. Ben Wallace, he was that deal, but we knew that team from Lindsey Hunter to Rasheed Wallace was stocked full of guys that had that dog.
Oh, yeah.
Adding Marcus Sasser, man, I am ecstatic. Like, we're not dealing with confidence issues, and we have a guy who wants to go out there and shoot the ball. And seriously, I wouldn't be surprised when he comes in if he's like, yo, I want the best player. I'm like, he's not even the tallest guy, but I just love the heart he plays with. So Marcus Sasser, man, what a pick. I think we upgraded our defense and our depth last night. I really do.
And can you talk to Marcus Sasser and Killian Hayes? Because I laughed because last night you knew it was coming. They drafted Marcus Sasser. It's like, hey, Killian, time's up, buddy. Time's up. But if you think about it, they could play together.
Yes.
You look at Marcus Sasser, the strengths he provides on the court compared to what Killian does. Killian's a better playmaker. Killian's bigger. He's a combo guard essentially, but so is Marcus Sasser. And I heard someone say this, and I think it's spot on. Body type, he's a point guard. Play style, he's a two guard. His shooting ability, his tenacious perimeter defense. I think him and Killian together. Now it's up to Killian if he wants to stick around. We agree there. He has to improve this year, specifically those efficiency numbers from three, significantly. But how can those two guys fit together? And what does this mean for Killian? Is this the end of Killian because they drafted Marcus Sasser?
Listen,
or is this Corey Joseph's replacement?
That's what I've been preaching for when I was talking about Scoot Henderson. I was like, yo, even if he had to come off the bench, if we so happen to land with number 2 and number 3, I was hoping we could land a guard, land a wing, because I do believe that Killian Hayes is the type of guard who can play next to combo and dynamic guards. I do. I believe in that. But I think about Mike James and Lindsey Hunter from the 2004 Detroit Pistons teams and how dynamic those guys were, and where did it start for these guys? Defensively. Yes. Killian Hayes needs to go back to where he started last season to open in the season interviews, where he said he wanted to be a defensive leader. And I remember I kind of breezed past that. And Jeff, you were the one who was like, yo, I'm more concerned. I like the fact that he's saying he wants to be a defensive leader. He needs to get back to that, because he and Marcus Sasser off the bench, bro, they could raise Cain. Like, seriously. I want to see that. I do, but Killian got to get his head together, man. He got to get his head right. I think he is. When I saw him at the Monty Williams presser, he just seemed light on his feet, man. Like, he's not necessarily worried or about the noise on the outside. And so I do believe that this is more or less something that it doesn't push him down the depth chart. I think it just kind of replaces Kojo in the lineup. It gives us a dynamic backcourt off the bench as well.
You know, Brandon, that's all well and good, and Jeff, that's all well and good. But I've been known as one of the biggest Killian Hayes haters, probably in Detroit sports media, and I haven't backed off of that yet, because I still have never seen him shoot 40% from the floor and 30% from three, and I am never going to stop saying that until he does it. But you and Jeff, Kool-Aid, you and Jeff have warmed me up to the idea
I appreciate that
he could be effective besides a guy like Marcus, pairing up with a guy like Marcus Sasser, because they do have different skill sets. Killian's got better size, is a better playmaker. Marcus Sasser is a better shooter. They both can defend. I think Marcus Sasser is a little bit more tenacious, but he is undersized. So is there a pathway to where this works, even if Killian Hayes is not much of a shooter?
Definitely. definitely, because I don't know how much he's trying to shoot, man. Like, he's just trying to go out there and play make and play defense. That's what we see.
What does he
from him.
have to be? Does it have to be a respectable three-point shooter? Because I think if you're a liability out there, that's a problem. But what is Killian in terms of just being respectable? Is that fair? If Killian can get to 34% from three.
Oh my God, 34%.
We'll take it.
Listen,
We'll take it.
He's shown it, and the coaches have continued to say it's not a skill or a talent issue. It's just up top. That's what makes me a little bit more bullish on Killian Hayes than others, because we've seen extreme stretches of good basketball. So we want to see him shoot over 40 and 30. He's had those stretches for 20 and 30, games of seasons, especially that second half of Cade's rookie year. Killian was a big contributor for them actually going 10 and 14. I know that we can scoff at it, but that's been the best stretch of Troy Weaver's tenure. And Killian Hayes had a big part to play in that. You go back and look at the runs. He also had a really nice stretch this season. Now, he's dealing with a lot. As a playmaker, who was he out there to play make with?
Sure.
Killian Hayes was one of the more talented ball handlers on the squad, and if I'm a defense, you know who I'm going to tee off on? Killian Hayes.
Right.
And then when the defense tees off or doubles or flusters or runs these shadow sets where they always keep a spy on Killian Hayes, nobody else is hitting anything. Killian Hayes has some of the most bad luck, like misses off of his assists ever. It's like, man, he's passing to guys, getting guys open, and there's misses. He has to become a better shooter. I agree with that, but I don't think that comes while the team is kind of devoid of talent. I think that they have to get their guys on the court, and where we've seen Killian Hayes the best is when there's been more talent on the floor, and I think that is true of a lot of players in the NBA.
I'm going to read two of these comments. Could you stick around? You got time?
Oh, I got time.
All right, we're going to talk about free agency in a little bit. But before, I'm going to read some of these comments. Chuck Brewer says, Jeff, where does Burke fit in with the Burke-Hayes choice? I'm assuming for Marcus Sasser. I don't think Marcus Sasser is going to be game one of the NBA season. He's not going to be a significant part of this rotation. I think that's something you kind of bank for in the future, especially with this season. I don't think it's smart to roll out there with a mostly, if you have an 8-man rotation, 6 of them all, pretty much 20-year-olds. You got to have some adults in the room. I think Burks deserves to play over Marcus Sasser, but I like Sasser for the future. I do, eventually. The other part of this I want to get to, Lonnie Hooper, he's been on fire today, by the way. Shout out to Lonnie Hooper. He brought up Killian and Marcus Sasser. Is that a Lindsey Hunter, Mike James?
I love that. I love
Lonnie
that
Hooper's been on
comparison,
point
man. I want these guys to look ahead. Like, I want these guys, if they're talking about a restoration, go back and look at how some of these guys played, because it was with that fabric that we call Detroit sports. That's what those guys play with. That's why we resonated so much with them. We gave them nicknames and all that, the alternators and all that stuff. It was like, what were they? The dog pound? Off the bench, man. The pit bulls, I believe it was the pit bulls. They came off the bench, and other teams, man. I remember being in the arena, and other people were just like, oh my gosh, because you got to deal with Chauncey Billups and Richard Hamilton, who are just, they're defensive wizards themselves. And then these guys are coming off the bench with an absolute tenacity. You knew our offense, and they talked about this, is going to come from the fact that we're going to rip you. I'm getting all mine in transition. We're going to make it difficult on you. That's what I want to see from Killian and Sasser. And if Sasser, honestly, I think he can contribute that way from day one. I'm going to wait to see what Troy says at the presser, if they can talk about it today. But I'm very interested in Marcus Sasser. I do believe that when you talk about a home run, you talk about it, man. We said, I'm not going to be surprised if Troy Weaver trades back in and gets 2 first-round picks, man. We talked about this.
We did.
And when we asked him the question at the presser, that was the one thing we were like, listen, just like your first draft when you saw a couple people down in Sadiq and Isaiah Stewart, and just like how Doran fell, and you knew we have to get that guy. Was there anyone that you see in this draft? And he looked us dead in the face and was like, yeah. I think Marcus Sasser is that guy, and he really believes. He was glowing last night at the press conference talking about these guys.
And listen, Marcus Sasser, Killian Hayes, both great defenders, but none of them match up to Guardian Alarm. It's just, that's the truth. Guardian Alarm is reliable.